I recognize the order. I recognize the honourable leader for the NDP.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the past couple of years, I've visited one particular sixplex in Dartmouth many times. The residents have now twice fallen victim to the flaws in the Premier's rent cap, first accepting increases above the cap, and second being forced to sign fixed-term leases and end their periodic ones. These tenants have information. They know it's illegal. They're working with our office. They're working with DAL Legal Aid, but they won't pursue a claim. Why? Because the building manager representing the owner in Ontario threatens them mercilessly with eviction. This is one example of the imbalance faced by renters. What does the Premier say to the people being victimized by this legislation?
I recognize the honourable Premier.
Madam Speaker, nobody wants any Nova Scotian to be victimized. There's a process, there's a law that people can follow. I urge the member to engage in that process, Madam Speaker. But the reason we have the housing crisis today is quite simple. The Liberals didn't invest when they were in power. The NDP, they also had an opportunity. They sat on tens of millions of federal dollars that could have been allocated to housing. It was allocated by the federal government for housing. The NDP just sat on it, Madam Speaker. They absolutely did nothing. We are making historic investments. We are seeing housing starts go up. Our plan will also create enough public housing for up to 700 families. That hasn't happened in a generation, Madam Speaker. We're getting to work when they sat on their hands when they had the chance.
I recognize the honourable leader of the NDP with her first supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd invite the Premier to focus on his government and their policies. One thing is clear. The status quo hasn't been working, not for landlords or for tenants. The Investment Property Association has long advocated for a tenancy enforcement unit to help. Of the current system, one landlord was quoted as saying, "It fails the tenants, it fails the landlords." I would almost go so far as saying it protects the bad apples, and I'll table that. The Premier responded to these concerns by landlords for making it easier and faster for them to evict. So that fixes the landlords' issues, but can the Premier explain to renters what he's done to help them?
I recognize the honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And this problem didn't start overnight. We didn't break it, but we're fixing it, Madam Speaker. And I'll tell you how we're fixing it. 40,000 more homes, 17,000 more affordable units, 700 people will have access to new public housing. Madam Speaker, we're getting to work. That's our plan. Our plan is about investment. Our plan is about action. And we have to catch up, Madam Speaker, for years and 2 successive governments of inaction. But we're getting to work, Madam Speaker. We know the solution to the housing crisis is more housing.
I recognize the honourable leader of the NDP with her final supplementary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Premier was given a solution, a tenancy enforcement unit, but he scrapped it. Okay, fine, but we still have landlords who demand an unlawful security deposit, who wrongfully remove tenants, who shut off their tenants' water, and who face no disincentive about this, because even if their actions are overturned by a hearing, and often they know the rules, they still don't have a punishment or a fine. A landlord can evict or pursue a tenant for lost rent. But as we recently heard from DAL Legal Aid, a tenant can do nothing. The Commission report called for bringing in penalties and fines for violating the Act. Will the Premier do that?
I recognize the honourable Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Obviously, there's a bill before the House that's being debated, and there is a process that I encourage the member to make sure that she informs her constituents to make themselves available of, and we'll continue to work through that process. But we know that the cost of living is, people are struggling. We know that housing is a big part of the cost of living struggles. That's why we're building more homes. We also know that the carbon tax puts a lot of pressure on Nova Scotians. Over $400 million a year leaves Nova Scotia, leaves the hands of Nova Scotia because of the carbon tax. I was interested to see the member's leader Singh, talking about maybe frantically trying to find an alternative to the carbon tax. Well, Madam Speaker, I have some good news for Leader Singh. We actually created one. I asked that member to take this to her leader. Still better than a carbon tax, even. I'll table that for the House.